Welcome to CivilNet. My guest today is David Lanson. He is an international police expert from the United Kingdom. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Lanson.
Thank you for asking me.
You are here, actually you come to Armenia quite often, for the past 5 years now.
That's right.
You work with the Armenian police, and you are here also taking part in a 2-day roundtable that was organized by the OSCE office in Yerevan and the Armenian police.
That's right.
Partnership between police, mass media, and NGOs. We were speaking earlier a lot about community policing and community police. Please tell us exactly what that means today.
Community policing exists in most countries, or most countries will say they have community policing, but it's different in every country. In essence, the idea between traditional policing, which is police officers more as a deterrent, as an enforcing body, the idea of community policing, it's to get closer to citizens, closer to communities. And invariably, in most countries, the police officers work within the community, and they deal with community-related issues.
Right, we live in a post-Soviet space. The countries in the region have all had the same historical experience with policing. In Armenia, studies show just interaction with residents and people in the country show that there is a level of mistrust. Police don't necessarily trust the citizens, citizens don't trust the police, but isn't that a very important component of deterrence, of maintaining order, of decreasing crimes in the country?
I think one of the problems is Armenia still has a structure that looks very similar to the old Soviet policing system as well. I've worked in Kazakhstan and they're a mirror to here. Even though it's 20 years plus since the independence, the structure is still very much the same. And in those days, the militia, by most people, they were not happy with the militia. They thought they were an oppressive, intimidating police service. So culturally, there's a historic dislike or mistrust in the police. And it's the same in most Soviet states or ex-Soviet states as well. And it's a big problem coming out in police reform to try and improve this.
Yeah, because oftentimes you will hear people here in Yerevan or in the country being a witness to crime, yet not calling the police or refusing to stand as a witness.
Yes.
Because of?
Yeah. Two things I think. Culture is, first of all, mistrust for the police, and it is improving, but there is still this underlying mistrust for the police. But Armenia as well has cultural issues like any other country has. But the cultural issues in Armenia are often deeply embedded, and one of them is you do not inform on your neighbour. Unless you need to for a personal gain or the actual allegation or offence is extremely serious. So if you resided in a block of flats and you had noise issues, it's unlikely the neighbour or a resident would contact the police. They'd try and deal with it themselves, or maybe not do anything, just accept it as it is. And that's for two reasons. The first one is they don't want to inform on citizens. And under the old punitive approach of police, the community police or the neighbourhood inspectors as they used to be called, the normal approach is one of stopping legislation, telling you what to do, and possible administrative violation. So by you ringing the police, you have this impression that the person will be punished, fined, and then you will be hated because you've got that person fined. That's not the case any longer, but it's the perception, if you know what I mean. So I think sometimes citizens need to appreciate that the police are changing and their styles are not always enforcement anymore. And you've got to improve your quality of life. And only by the police coming and dealing with these issues, these neighbourhood issues, will society improve, accept the police more culturally as well. So there's more factors than just trust in the police. There's underlying cultural issues from societies as well.
Does the societal development then and legal awareness of citizens, would that help improve police services if, for example, there was more advocacy on behalf of civil society, if more citizens were aware of their legal rights?
Yes.
So in your role coming to Armenia, working with the police, do you look at it from that angle as well? Do you work? I
try to. I tend to come on theme. So on one particular time I'll come for, like I'm here at the moment for 10 weeks, on disseminating what community policing is into the masses, so all around the masses. So that's a totally different style or approach to that I'm doing this time. I've been previously training public order managers who actually train their own staff in how to train public order management. So each time I come it's very, very different, if you notice. It's a themed approach. So I don't come with an overarching requirement to make things different totally. I have a very clear mandate every time I come.
And how is it received by the police department, by the authorities?
Yes, it's received very, very well actually. The first time I came was in 2009. It was looking at their approaches to public order management, which in essence was riot control, etc. And I did quite a lengthy analysis of that and quite a lengthy report, which is available on the OSCE website as well. And the initial concept in 2009, 2010, reluctance, was it really right, do you really know what you're saying, that sort of approach. But over the last 2 to 3 years, a big change now, that they tend to accept exactly what I'm saying to them, they do listen, but the system's difficult to change. And the people within the system, very authoritative, centralised organisation, Soviet style again, getting better, but not quite right yet.
And in the years that you've been coming, and I'm sure that you've also looked at the progress over the last 20 plus years since independence, for example, in riot control, when there are mass demonstrations, has police reaction, police maneuvers, tactics, have they improved?
Yes.
In your estimation?
I think they have, but just to point about the previous question, the information you tend to hear from either the police and from many citizens is they're not very aware of legislation or the application of legislation, which is, that's why I didn't answer your question fully before. So there is an educational need for the citizens as well. But what I find when I try and read the law, because there are normally English versions of it, the legislation is almost the same as any other country. There's no great difference. Different words might be used. But also within it, there's no explanation of what is a particular offence or what circumstances creates that particular violation. There's no clarity for the citizen to be able to say, actually, that behaviour is this, you know, and be able to see it. So I think that's a part of legislation that is missing, I think, information for the citizens. So I welcome advocacy on behalf of the citizens or should we say the activists or anybody like that gets clarity over what is a breach of public order as an example or not. What defines it? Or it's all right the police saying it is a breach of public order, like the tent issue, but what really makes that a breach of public order management, and in what circumstances will it be a breach of public order management? People talk about arbitrariness is the latest term that's kicking around. How different people interpret the law, basically.
It's always a matter of interpretation, isn't it?
Interpretation isn't clear, and it's even less clear for the police have their own interpretation and the prosecution and the courts to a certain extent, but the citizens can't get or don't seem to see what the interpretation is, and I think that's a big void in Armenia, is that. But going back to public order management, it has improved considerably, I think, in Armenia over the last, certainly the 5 years I've been coming here. When I came in 2009, very much mass police numbers, very much oppression, looking, observing, you could say intimidating to a certain extent.
Sure.
The protests that you normally see on a Thursday outside of the governmental buildings, normally quite peaceful, a bit noisy, but normally
there's
peaceful.
long lineups of police.
Historically, each individual protest group would have been encircled, and the media would have had no freedom. Now, the police, normally the 4th and 5th Battalion, those with the grey berets, the very smart uniforms, they tend to stand back more. There is a line of them, but part of their responsibility is to stop the protesters getting into the building, and I can understand that. So how they police it is much better than it used to be, and the command of that is much better as well. Day-to-day policing, particularly again with the 4th and 5th Battalion, often termed the elites or the angels people call them, they are more communicative. They're very good, they look smart, they do talk to people, they actually approach citizens as well. Internationals like them, I do like them.
Because they look smarter and because they're more professional, and they will engage?
They do engage, yes.
Which is something that traditionally
that doesn't apply, no. The old patrol service, which is the preventative patrol, the visible patrol, often in camouflage, baseball cap types of uniform. Whilst they do talk to citizens, it's nowhere near to the engaging side that the 4th and 5th Battalions do. And so I always say to the police, the 4th and 5th Battalion approach is the style of policing you should have everywhere. And the patrol service who walk around in small numbers, that's the style they need to migrate towards. Where you have passive protest, this is again the Thursday protests outside of the government building. The police are very good at dealing with that now, as I would say almost as good as most European countries, when nothing happens. And then you have the issues where you get the city protest, the Mashtots 5 protest, the, what's the other one that you get? The park,
right.
Mashtots Park, where something happens, where the activists push them, sit down protest. They've not got that right yet. They've not
Right, because, I mean, look, part of the sort of role of those protesting or the activists is to provoke perhaps some police reaction.
Yes.
Creates a little bit of a scuffle, the media is more interested, so they haven't learned yet how to deal with that kind of provocation.
Right, they haven't, yeah. And whilst education is changing now at the educational complex, there's new curricula, there's new styles, it will take time to come through. The curricula isn't perfect yet. There's a lot more needs to be done about communication skills, de-escalation skills, not getting drawn into an argument. I'm a police officer, I'm a professional, you can shout at me whatever you want unless you commit a violation. It won't harm me, I'm a big man, I'm a big girl. Be brave, that's what policing's about. But Armenia as a society is very emotional.
You think?
Yeah, particularly arguments. And the police have to stop being drawn or feeling intimidated into this practice. So you're right, that's for me.
That kind of training is tough, it takes years,
It takes years, it's not going to happen overnight.
Right.
And you do have should we say an activist? I don't like the term activist, it suggests nasty people, but people who are protesting, and quite rightly got the right to protest, do try, or some try and aggravate because they want the photograph, they want the video.
Sure.
And some of the practices that they use really is wrong as well, and I don't think the police know how to deal with it. Constant videoing, close videoing on people's, it's unnecessary, it's not right, but it's become accepted practice.
Well, now, because as a response to the flip of the police, now protesters or people taking part will do the same with their iPhones in front of the police like this. So it's like almost a tit for tat,
yes,
you know,
it's become,
and that can spiral out of control.
And it does spiral out of control as well. And when you have an incident happens, and invariably in policing, something invariably does happen, and the police are totally right to use force as part of the police as a body, as long as they do it right at the right time and to the extent. And when you see the media showing a particular scuffle, they don't show what's caused the scuffle in the first place. And I know historically the police, particularly after the terrible events of 2008, have stepped back considerably from, shall we say, enforcement, use of force, etc. And I think many of the police are fearful of actually using force or don't want to use force until they actually have to do.
Yeah, it was a very horrible lesson, I think, that everybody learned.
Yes,
when
I think the police as a body got a really big shock from that, and society in general, to be quite fair. And if you compare today's policing to the situation then, not just the serious disorder, but also the style of policing, it has changed considerably.
Well, that's very good to hear and to know. Actually, I mean, we see it ourselves that there has been improvement, certainly not to the levels that we want them to be.
I agree.
But we do have to acknowledge when there is improvement, to encourage further improvement.
Yes. It's fair to say that in most big countries going through democratic change, most practices 10 to 20 years.
That's how long it takes.
That's how long it takes, 10 to 20 years, because each change you make has an impact, not just on the police themselves, the court systems need to change, the prosecution system needs to change, cultural society has to change. Something happens, it gets knocked back again, and then off you go again, 10 to 20 years. So I think that the police in Armenia, to have got where they are in 5 years, that I've been getting involved, actually is remarkable. But we'd like it to be better and quicker and faster.
Well, a few steps forward, one step back.
Right. As long as you keep going forward.
That's right.
That's the main thing.
Well, thank you very much for this fascinating talk. It was very, very informative, and hopefully we'll see you on the streets of Yerevan.
I'm normally walking around.
You'll be walking around, smiling and saying good morning to the citizens.
Good morning.
Right.
Thank you very much.
A lesson to be learned for all of us.
It is a big lesson. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Okay. I'd like to remind our viewers that my guest today was David Lance, and he's an international police expert here with the OSCE. Stay with CivilNet.